Skolnick is next, and just a warning, you have far less than 15 minutes to go. Ana grew up in Chicago and studied interior architecture and design at Columbia College. She can nerd out about places and spaces, but hula hooping will always be her first love. She's been practicing for 8 years and teaching for the past 3, but what she enjoys most is noticing the many different ways hula hooping fosters movement, dance, and personal expression. Ana Skolnick.
Hey guys. So, this is my third PK about hula hooping. Oh my gosh. The first one was about how I got into it. The second one was about various endeavors, or you could say my hoop dreams. But this time, I want to step away from talking about it solely as a hobby. Because over the years, I've heard from a lot of friends who've seen my hula hooping, as well as some of my other design projects, that they can see how it's all kind of the same puzzle. And it's such a huge compliment when they say that, because it's like, yeah, I totally agree. So, in an attempt to hone in on what that is exactly, I want to show you how my obsession with hula hooping has shaped the way I think about design ideas and vice versa. And to be honest, I'm a little nervous that this might not make any sense. But if there's anyone in the world who can draw parallels between hula hooping and the built environment, it's definitely me. So, I'm going to start with the process. Because design really values the idea of process, showing how you got from point A to B to C to E to G. Like when you're crushing on someone and everything's all fun and exciting at first, designing kind of feels like it's all about the chase, but like in a more fulfilling way and without any regrettable hookups. I got my degree in interiors about a year ago at Columbia College. And what I loved about that whole experience was how the program encouraged a lot of exploration. Had a lot of fun geeking out on the sketches, the study models, and more study models, incrementally building on ideas that are always in the back of my head. And I know that projects inevitably have to come to an end. But since my whole world revolves around this stuff, it's like patterns and schemes would seep into all other aspects of my life, continuing to make little changes here and there until I'd eventually arrive at something new. Well, the same goes for hula hooping. It's all one big happy accident after another. You pick it up, you start moving around, then you make a mistake and you're like, wait, what was that? And spend about the next 3 to 6 months trying to replicate what you just did. And it can definitely feel tedious as hell. But every once in a while, it's worth it for that adrenaline rush when you feel something click. And as an activity, hula hooping is very attainable. You probably remember doing it as a kid, but can't remember why you ever stopped. And all the talk about not having any hips is BS, okay? I'll tell you why you stopped. You got bored. Because spinning a plastic tube around and around on your waist is pretty boring. When I say that it's like a puzzle, I'm talking about learning different moves, combinations, and how they all connect together. It's about transitions and developing an understanding of what fits together and why. And as transitions become increasingly second nature, hula hooping becomes a synthesis of the way we naturally move our bodies and how the hoop naturally tends to fall. Like an extension of yourself, to the effect that it's more like dancing rather than a series of circus tricks. At least that's the way I look at it and why I've managed to stay interested for so long. It's always in a state of process and exploration. So last summer, I conquered my architecture FOMO and finally drove out to see the Farnsworth House by Mies van der Rohe. It was a lot of fun. It was cool to see how so much was taken into account for the sake of this tiny little house. Everything's so carefully thought of from every conceivable angle, tailored to the anatomical proportions of Dr. Edith Farnsworth. But some people look at this style of architecture and they're totally bored. And I get it. It's like, what's so special about a whole bunch of steel beams holding up a glass cube? Well, with hula hooping, when you separate out the moves, they're each pretty basic. What makes them interesting is how they all flow together. Like I said, it's all about transitions. Designing goes along a similar vein, in that it's all about details and connections. And by paring down materials, you could really feel how the entire site seamlessly integrated with the landscape and nearby river, like you're just floating in midair. So I guess, when I think about design and hula hooping and pretty much life in general, It ultimately comes down to having a sense of flow, or as I like to call it, heavy flow. I feel like right now there's a lot of pressure to stand out, and we're inundated with so much creativity that it makes us all different in the same way, especially when it comes to the scene or subculture or any group of people with common interests. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, thinking that you need to act a certain way to be accepted by the rest of the community. That said, heavy flow is basically what I've dubbed as the hula hooping equivalent of BDE. By the way, if you're just now hearing about BDE for the first time, you should ask me about it later. Heavy flow is about not being afraid to fumble around and taking your time to learn things. It's about letting go of BS and not measuring your worth in YouTube subscribers or Insta fame. It's about unpacking something intricate or technical and sharing your insight with everyone across numerous platforms. Flow is about observing and not trying to control things. Yet, every time I find myself back in a frenzy, cycling through potential ideas, it's like rediscovering what that means all over again. How to let go and facilitate the way things want to fall into place. I think what characterizes my hula hooping style is that it's unique, but not for the purpose of standing out. Instead of spending hundreds of dollars on a digital light show, I like to keep it analog, focusing on movement and the body, and the special effects inherent of our day-to-day surroundings. But it's taken me a long time to recognize that even though hula hooping is my practice and it means a lot to me, that it definitely isn't for everyone. Obviously, I enjoy nerding out about it, but if you're totally bored, that's okay. I'm down to sit around and shoot the shit about virtually anything. Because it's about being a chill person, but not being a douche about it. And if you're a real hooper or a real designer, then you can handle any kind of heavy flow.
You didn't watch, or you didn't use all of your 400 seconds here. I think we wanted to hear more. Are those some amazing images? Anna, thank you. I think